AR Struble 1. How many people do you think join the Sea Org annually? With technology and info at our fingertips, how has the Sea Org changed their recruitment from 30 years ago? I did see your podcast on recruitment tactics. Based on all of that, would you say most of the recruits are youth raised in Scientology? I would think recruiting a young adult with no real-world background would be difficult unless they were down on their luck, no family, destitute, etc., and they saw a place for food and shelter. Then the brainwashing could easily take effect. Okay, so I ran some numbers sort of looking at, how many Sea Org bases there are and how many recruiters there are and how much work they're doing and how, from what I remembered as well of how many recruits would come in on a week-to-week basis. And basically, I think, I'm sort of guesstimating that it's about 500 people a year get recruited into the Sea Org worldwide. It might sound a little high, but when you have 52 weeks, you got 5 Sea Org bases recruiting full-time. I think that's, maybe shooting a little low actually, but the attrition rate is higher or as high, or around that same amount. Now I can't, swear on that on a stack of Dynetics books or something, but I can say that they lose a lot of people and that the Sea Org has not been a voluminously growing, exponentially expanding organization over all these years, right? They were at around, I estimated about 5,000 people and back in 2012 when I left, and I think in the last 5 years they've probably lost more than they've gained. So that's, kind of numbers wise, I think that's where it's at. Now, I think you might have a bit of a skewed view from the wording of your question as to how recruitment gets done and who gets targeted for recruitment for the Sea Org. They really go after the children of Scientologists. They go after young people. There are a few reasons for that. It wasn't always that way, and I think in terms of how it's changed over the last 30 years, I think we've seen more of a focus on younger people, and by younger I mean upper teens, early 20s. Generally speaking, people who are not in college, don't have student loans, aren't professionally practicing, highly skilled labor. Like those are the guys you really want to get in the Sea Org these days. It used to be different in that they would go after, professionals, trained adults, this sort of thing. But the logistics of getting into the Sea Org are rough. I mean, you got to find people who can, if they have a house, they're going to sell it. If they have a car, they're probably going to sell it. They can't have, little babies and stuff, right? I mean, especially now. I mean, over the last 20 years or so, it's just been on that for the most part. For the most part, there's always exceptions, but that's kind of how that rolls. And, so you want to get people. Sea Org recruiters are constantly being hit up every week for new recruits. It's really unacceptable as a recruiter to have a big goose egg on your statistic for the week, right? Not having any recruits. That's going to get you in trouble. So they've got to go after the people they can develop these recruitment prospects and make them happen quickly. It's always about now, speed. Gotta. And so and that's another reason why the young demographic is the one to go after. And you can, especially, they'll go after kids who are in Scientology schools up in Delphi, Oregon, Delphi, LA, whatever that Clearwater Academy was. Those are all private schools. Sea Org recruiters would go around there all the time to get the second gen, third gen kids, right? Another source is staff of Scientology organizations who are not yet in the Sea Org, right? Who are, that's sort of, I've explained before, you have public staff Sea Org. So that's how I got into the Sea Org. And when I was doing recruitment for the Sea Org, I recruited for a year. And I got 11 people into the Sea Org in that time. It was about one a month. And I'd be sent out to these locations like Seattle, Portland, Twin Cities. And I would find a staff member who either already wanted to come or had been thinking about it, and I'd sit them down and I'd work them over and I'd recruit them. And then I would find somebody to replace them and I'd send them on up to the Sea Org. So that was how I was operating as a Sea Org recruiter and on my recruitment projects. And I was considered very successful. That year was a great year for guy to go out and get all those people into the Sea Org who I was not a recruiter. That wasn't my job. but I was on this special, these series of projects to do that, right? And it was in the, as far as methods of recruitment, it's always been about promoting the, Hubbard said, promote the charisma of the Sea Org. You know, you always, the uniforms and the prestige and the eliteness of it. It's kind of like, you know, the same in the military. They talk about, you know, and promote the special forces and the Green Berets and the, you know, these guys, right? The special, highly trained guys, the Rangers and those guys. You know, hardly anybody, I think, joins the military so that they can go be an infantryman. You know, they always have these ideas of grandeur, right, going into this stuff. And of course, you can create that with young people easier than you can with older people. So the Sea Org was sort of the same approach. And it was a guy named Brandon Faust who developed that briefing that I gave a whole video about, where we get into the conspiracy theories and all of the crazy, you know, world, global, you know, 12 men ruling the world thing and how the Sea Org has to save the planet. That all came in the 1990s, late 90s, and through the 2000s. So that's kind of when that method became a thing. But that never fully replaced this other thing of just pushing, you know, people to join. Almost always, I mean 99.9% of the time, Sea Org recruiters are going after Scientologists. You don't want somebody coming in the Sea Org who doesn't truly believe, truly, you know, think that L. Ron Hubbard's the cat's meow, think that Scientology is absolutely the shit, you know, like that's the person you're trying to get into the Sea Org, because you're literally talking about dedicating the rest of your life to something. And that's a big commitment. And everybody, you know, who comes in the Sea Org has some concept that that's what they're doing. Nobody gets recruited into the Sea Org on the idea that they're only going to be there for a few years and then they're going to take off. That is no part of the conversation ever. It is lifelong commitment, billion-year contract. You're on board, and you're gonna join, and you're gonna die here. You know, that's kind of the attitude. So I don't know. I think that's a pretty good, you know, all-around take on how that whole thing breaks down.